So the whole project started in 2016 when I hung out with my friend Thomas, and we heard this rumor that the European Union wants to ban tubes because of the high power consumption. From this day on, we had the idea to create a dream of us, to create the final tube amp as an encore to the tube amp culture. So Thomas contacted his good friend Tom, who is a super specialist regarding tube amps creation, tube amps repairing. So Tom loved the idea about combining two clean amps. And so he started to create the first layouts of an amp we had in mind. And after 1 or 2 years, he came up with the first prototype. When we got the prototype ready, it was only the chassis and the electronics. We started to do comparison. We had a huge collection of other tube amps. We had a huge collection of speakers, and we started to figure out in which direction our perfect sound is going. After we had this first meeting, Tom created the second prototype. It's with the same speakers, with the same kind of comparison amps. After a few years, we had the final chassis, the final electronic core, the actual amp ready. And from this point on, we started to do the design of the final amp. So for the design, on one side, I wanted to create a very futuristic looking amp, but on the other side, it should have a reference to the 50s and the 60s in terms of style and look. And I wanted to create somehow a combination of these two directions. So in the days when I designed the amp, I was also parallel designing my new guitar, the Samurai. So I was very much into these highly dynamic shapes. And you can see the kind of dynamic in both in the Samurai and in the amp. So when I had finally the design on paper, I handed over the whole project to David, who is a fantastic engineer and a great 3D CAD designer. And he actually merged my design idea with the cubic of the chassis of the actual amp. So during this design process, we always created prototypes, had a look in real size and changed the design, adjusted the design. We checked for functional problems, adjusted them, and finally the design was done and we did the real first prototype. We actually reduced to the max. We have 2 channels clean. They are a little different. The equalizer is very, very fine, not a big adjustment possibility. And you can switch from 1 channel to channel. You can listen to each channel separate, or you can mix both channels. In the cabinet, we have a very fine, soft Jensen speaker and a very punchy, hard electro voice. Even it is a very fine, reduced to the max amp, you can anyways dial in a lot of different sounds. After all these years of designing and building our dream amp, we heard it the first time live, and it was a really wonderful experience. So at the end, we gave this amp the name Encore as an encore for the tube amp era.